going to go over adjectives and adverbs because we do these together just because sometimes people have a hard time distinguishing between the two. But really, adjectives and adverbs, adjectives especially, are pretty simple just in the fact that they only describe one thing. So adjectives, another new pen here. Adjectives describe nouns. And that could be pronouns too, but they're kind of one and the same, I guess. Nouns and pronouns, okay? That's the thing. You can ask yourself these questions if it's easier. You know, what kind of house? Which one? How many houses? Or how much space? Whatever it might be. So you can ask yourself the questions, but again, if you know what a noun is and you have a word before a noun, it's most likely an adjective. And then we have what becomes adjectives depending on a sentence. So our pronouns can actually become adjectives. Possessive pronouns do become adjectives when there's a noun following it. So over here are some examples. Our dog was found last night. Our by itself is a personal pronoun, but in this case, because it's describing which dog, it's our dog, which makes that an adjective. Would you prefer this book? This by itself, as you saw before, this, that, these, and those, is a pronoun, but in this case, because it comes right before the adjective, it's which book, this book. So although adjectives often are descriptors and they allow us to describe things differently or so in more detail, these aren't descriptive, but they still are considered adjectives in those sentences. Same with this, this, and this, okay? But we often know adjectives as describing words. Adverbs, on the other hand, I like adverbs. I think they were probably the hardest thing for me to figure out when I was in high school. But the thing with adverbs is that there are these list of adverbs that are always adverbs here. And I think that's super important to have in front of you when you're doing these activities, because if you know that these are always adverbs, then it makes it a lot easier. And then there are the words that are ly words that are mostly adverbs. This is nice to have, but if you truly want to know if you have an adverb, you have to ask yourself these questions. I use these questions. I use where, when, how. I use how. I don't use in what manner and to what extent. So adverbs describe everything besides the nouns, because what describes nouns? Adjectives. Adverbs describe verbs, which in a lot of cases you'll see quite often, adjectives, and other adverbs. Adverbs can often be moved around in a sentence as well. So he happily ran. He ran happily. You can move those adverbs around in a sentence, and usually it works perfectly fine, especially the ly ones. So ask yourself where. He fell below. Where did he fall? Below. He climbs down. Where did he fall down? Or where did he climb down? Now, if I said he climbs down the ladder, this becomes a prepositional phrase now because we have a noun with it. So this is a prepositional phrase, but if I say he climbs down, period, then it's an adverb because it's by itself. So that gets a little bit tricky when you have some of those words that could potentially be a preposition. But remember, prepositions always have a noun with them or a pronoun with them. So if I go to the exercise 1 with adjectives and adverbs, it says to circle the adjectives in the sentence and draw arrows. That's key right there, because that's where it gets tricky. From the adjectives to the words they modify. Okay, and then over here, it says circle the adverbs and draw arrows. So this is where you want to put where. I always put the questions next to me. When, how, and to what extent. I just memorize the questions because I think it makes it a lot easier. So adjectives are fairly easy. I will go up here and show you. I'll do number 1 and 2 with you. Okay, the new teacher was patient and helpful. So we know teacher is the subject. So a subject is a noun or a pronoun, but this is the subject of the sentence. What describes the teacher? There are 3 words here that describe the teacher: new teacher, patient teacher, and helpful teacher. And you can see that this is a linking verb, right? Which, because you can't was, number 1, but it's a linking verb because it links teacher to your predicate, which is everything after the verb. One poor elephant was suffering from a bad toothache. Okay, so bad describes the toothache. There are 3 of them in here. Look at, I gave you the numbers. One poor elephant. Poor describes the elephant. Now, the one that people have trouble finding in here is what would be a pronoun by itself, but in this case, it's telling you the quantity of the number, okay, of the elephants. And that would be 1 elephant, okay? So again, that one's not descriptive, but it definitely is still an adjective. Down here in exercise 2 with your adverbs, I have my questions over here. Like I said, we'll walk through a couple of these. Meteorologists can certainly predict the weather quite accurately. Okay, meteorologist would be our subject. I can predict this is an action verb. It's important to put those verbs in there because a lot of times, remember, we said that adverbs describe verbs. So in this case, we have some simple adverbs because they end with ly. But if you want to make sure that they're correct, ask yourself the questions. To what extent can they predict, or how can they predict? They can certainly predict. See, you have the ly. So that describes the verb. The weather quite accurately. So how accurately? Quite. This is one of those always adverbs, so it's describing the actual adverb accurately. How do they predict it? Accurately. So we have adverb, adverb, adverb. And these are easy because they end in ly, but not all ly words are adverbs, because I have an example, assembly. The word assembly is not an adverb. It's just a noun. All right, this one has 3 adverbs. The nice thing about this is that a process of elimination, once you get your verb, walked, and your subject in there, you only have 3 words left. So now you know those are all adverbs, but you should still ask the question. Harry walked where? In. When? Yesterday. To what extent? Yesterday. Late. So, yesterday, he walked where and when. Oops. That describes that, and that describes that. Sorry about that. Again, on a test, I'm never going to make you like draw the arrows, but what this does, it forces you to process the questions. So when you do get to a test, it's just embedded in your mind, like where, when, how, to what extent. And again, you don't have to draw the arrows, but it might help to distinguish if it's an adverb or an adjective. So let's do one more of these, just because I think they're just tricky. I'm going to do number 4. There are 4 of them in here. Steve plays the violin extremely well. How does he play it? He plays it well, right? How well? Extremely well. Okay? But I am not very fond of the sound of violins. Okay, this is an always adverb. There are 2 always adverbs right here. And so, to what extent are you fond? Very, but actually not very fond. Not very fond, okay? So these are actually always adverbs. So if you look at that always adverb list, I think that's the easiest way to find those. Okay, so this 3rd exercise, we'll do a couple. The ones that are ly, remember the ly words here, they're always going to be adverbs. And the others are adjectives. So the ones that aren't ly, the first one is an adjective, the second word is an adverb. So you have to distinguish, do I choose the adverb here, or do I choose the adjective? So you can find the way easy or easily from here. A lot of people want to do this based on sound, but I will tell you that when you base something on sound, if you hear it wrong all the time, then it sounds right. So you can't always base it on sound, because you'll often get it wrong, okay? You can find the way easy or easily from here. How can I find the way? Easily. To what extent? Easily. So easily describes find, and that is an adverb. I spoke too hasty. How did you speak? It describes the verb. So if it describes the verb, you have to choose the adverb. The lawyer argued her case, convincing or convincingly. How did she argue it? Argue as a verb, and so therefore she argued convincingly. The man seemed unsteady or unsteadily on his feet. Man is the subject, seemed as a linking verb. You only use adverbs when you have an action verb. So when you have a linking verb, you're going to be using the adjective. But if you don't know that, you just say the man is unsteadily or is unsteady. Unsteady describes the man, and man is a noun. Therefore, you have to choose the adjective. Okay? So I'm going to have you try the rest of those. Hopefully that makes sense. Just keep practicing.